flashback to the far-forgotten past of 2014. The horror genre is under siege by a group of games called Mascot Horror. Now we're in the future, and it still is. Everyone knows already, we got our mainstays that have been here since the start, like FNAF and Bendy. We got some new guys like Poppy Playtime and Garten of Banban. I am never making a video on these games. But the games that really interest me are the ones that got lost along the way and nobody talks about them anymore. I'm talking Case Animatronics, I'm talking Slaughter Me Street, and I'm talking the subject of this video, Tattletail, baby. Now, Tattletail's an interesting game because it sort of appeared out of nowhere one day. It got one trailer before it came out, and then it started appearing all over my YouTube homepage, as most diseases start. It dropped during a really good time. I'd argue this whole Mascot Horror thing was at its peak during 2016 and 2017, so everyone jumped on Tattletail when it came out. There's not much about development, all we really got are the people who made the game, with the lead developer being Ben Esposito. I wonder what game he made before this one. Oh my god. I hopped on the train not long after the game came out, which made me realize Tattletail's on the earlier part of the spectrum. It predates a lot of others in the same niche, notably Bendy and Baldi, which feels wrong to me. I don't know why I remember it releasing much later than it did. I played this game a good few times back in 2017, did that DLC thing when it came out, and then didn't touch it for actual years. I think when I picked it up again this year, Steam said I hadn't played it since like 2018. Anyway, I streamed this to my friends, which gave my thumbnail artist a severe case of brain worms, and now I play this thing every other month. I'm like a court jester with none of the variety. Tattletail sits comfortably next to the others in the genre of normal kids thing, but now it's evil. I never wanted a Furby as a kid. I gotta wake up super early to go to school and learn about numbers, and Jesus Christ, I don't have time to be a decent father on top of that. Not much has changed since then, so I guess I can use this as a really weird parental training tape. I actually really like this title screen. We got this big thing, a really dark background, and this perpetual grinding sound in the background coupled with a simple yet aesthetically pleasing menu. It helps add some menace to our main antagonist here and gives you time to be nervous about it before the game reminds you this thing is like 2 feet tall at most. The illusion gets broken a bit once you beat the game and this little eyesore gets added into the corner, but we don't gotta worry about that right now. It's 5 days before Christmas, and we're trying to speedrun our way to the naughty list in the final hour, so we mosey our way downstairs to open our presents early. Despite there being more than one thing to unwrap, we only care about one gift, our very own Tattletail. Look at this thing. We get introduced to its needs. You gotta feed it, brush it, and have its baggery taken care of, otherwise it'll start yelling at you. You also got a flashlight. This is a way more satisfying mechanic than it has any right to be. You shake the thing up like you're tending bar, and it gives you light. It's nothing crazy, but I like the feedback between the number of right clicks corresponding to the number of shakes, resulting in the amount of light you get, and since shaking it up makes noise, sometimes you'll want to get by on a little bit of light if it means not being super loud. Speaking of noise, on night 3 we get introduced to Mama Tattletail, who immediately presents herself as bad news. It was never in our house before this, it didn't start appearing until we saw a set of red eyes the night prior, and playing its tape tells a story of her rounding up a group of children in a particularly murdery way. Mama's the only threat in this game, assuming you don't count this perpetual danger to my life, and I mean, yeah, she fills the role well, I guess. Look man, I like this game, but I'm not gonna pretend I'm afraid of this scary oval. Bro's the Eggman, I can't play up everything, dude. I feel like the ways they use Mama are a lot better at inducing tension and potential fear than the design itself. The red eyes acting as the best way to know where she is works pretty well, considering you don't want to make eye contact because your flashlight instantly dies if you do. It's also not great to stay in the dark, because even if you can manage yourself fine, Tattletail definitely can't, and him shivering in his timbers makes enough noise to get you killed. But wait, back up. This game has 5 nights like that other thing, and I skipped all the way to night 3, so what's the deal with that? Well, here comes the first big problem this game has, and really the only major one. Half of it doesn't matter. Now I know what you might be thinking, how could a game with a face like that have problems? And I know it's hard to believe, but please bear with me. Night 1 and 2 are both tutorial nights, but for some reason when they introduce the food and brush bars, they skip out on the battery and save it for night 2. Meanwhile, night 2 basically only gets you introduced to the flashlight, which takes 5 seconds, and you get a glimpse of Mama, but you don't actually interact with her. Going even further with this, night 3 doesn't have much going on either until the last bit where you clean up Tattletail's mess near the tree, and you have to outmaneuver Mama for the first time, but it's one of the shorter encounters with her, and it's the last thing that happens before the night's over. You don't even gotta wait until the power comes back on. I finished the section by making my way over to the bed with little and no problems and ending the night of my own volition. I don't mind there being a tutorial night. I'm trying not to bring it up too often here, but FNAF 3 had one as well. I was fine with it there, and that game had less systems at play than Tattletail does, so I'd say it's more deserved here, but it definitely could have been condensed down into a single level if you ask me. Ideally, Nights 1 and 2 would have been combined, Night 3 would become the new Night 2, and something else would slog in for Night 3. As it is right now, the game doesn't get going until it's almost over. To be fair, the last 2 nights go on for much longer than the first 3, long enough to where I'd say the last 2 nights are a whole half of the game, but there still could have been more than that, you know? Night 4 is where things really get started, primarily because our house has an infestation. More Tattletails have started showing up at our house, and they're big fans of hide and seek. While they're hiding, you have to endure Mama for increasing amounts of time, ending in needing to survive for a minute 30, which is a longer amount of time than it sounds. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Extended stretches where you have to deal with the primary threat. They're the best parts of the game, but it takes a while to start happening. It also does a good job of showing off the game loop, balancing Tattletail's needs, your sound level, and the amount of light you have, on top of managing your positioning. The further into the game you progress, the faster Tattletail's meters drain, and there aren't multiple spots to refuel. You've only got the fridge, the living room brush, and the charging station way downstairs. In theory, only really the food and brush meters matter. The balance with the charging station is that it drains slowly but takes a long time to fill. Theoretically, this makes it the most dangerous meter, and something of an event. The battery will more than likely only drain once a night, and if it does, you'll be a sitting duck making constant noise. This will make you want to recharge it often, but it's the most out of the way to get to, so it's hard to work with. In practice, a lot of these nights don't last long enough for the battery to become a big factor. The only one where it'd be problematic is the final night, but you swap Tattletails around that come with fully charged bars, so it's actually the least likely to come into play here. On nights with constant action, there's also frequent stops where the power comes back and Mama isn't chasing after you, which gives you ample time to refuel the charging station if you really need it. So unless you're being careless, there's always going to be time for you to charge back up the battery without being chased during it. The food and brush meters are the most important because especially on later nights, they drain fast, and if you're caught with your pants down, you gotta make a break for it, and sometimes even that won't salvage the situation. It's fun to work with and can especially become a problem if you have something you gotta do in the basement because the game loves sending you over there and it's the furthest location in the house from either the brush or the fridge. The way they use Mama in tandem with this is really fun too. Generally, if you mind your own business and keep the noise down, she won't get in your way. There's just one problem with this, the aforementioned power cut she can do. It starts blinking out if you're close to looking at her, and making full eye contact means lights out. You want to not shake the flashlight to not make noise, but then you find out about Tattletail's darkness mechanic because the game doesn't really tell you about it. It creates a little balancing act where you need to get enough shakes out of the light for Tattletail to be fine without shaking it too much and getting killed, which only gets harder the longer you're being chased for. You can work with little loopholes in the mechanics to make things easier, or in some cases straight up break the game. 2 easy examples, because I do these all the time. Noise doesn't stack depending on the amount of noise-making actions you're doing. That means that if one of Tattletail's meters runs out, don't even bother walking in the interest of being a little quieter, just run for whatever you need, because you're already making noise, so it doesn't matter. Tattletail is also the only motivating factor you have to keep the flashlight on, but there's multiple sections where you can be chased by Mama without having Tattletail on you. You can already see where this is going. Don't run, don't shake the flashlight, and do your best to navigate in the dark, and you're pretty much never in danger of dying, provided Mama isn't literally blocking where you want to go. I also think they do a pretty good job with sound design when you're being hunted. Sound design and aesthetic are one of the game's stronger points, but it's particularly good when you're about to be killed brutally. As soon as the chase starts, there's this constantly building piece in the background, slowly getting louder and more intense. It freaks you out into thinking you're gonna die, and then just as it reaches its peak, it dies down, the cycle repeats. It's good at making tension without just blasting stinger sounds at you, and the song never tries to correlate with when you're actually gonna get jumped. It's always coincidental when it happens. Speaking of which, the game actually makes good use of sound effects. There aren't a ton, aside from this rattling noise the flashlight makes that I love because I'm like a cat with a ball of yarn apparently. There's only 2 important ones. First, this quick thumping sound whenever Mama moves. She teleports between set spots she can be in, but the running noise does a good job of masking it, and is a good indicator of when you know it's safe to cross the road without looking both ways. Out of all of them, my favorite is the sound for when your flashlight gets killed. It's not a generic horror stinger or someone passing out on the piano. Nah, it's a booming, electrifying...
Mama's looking after me.
Not only is that very different sounding from what other horror games opt for, it's also the perfect way to signal that, guess what, buddy, you're a dumbass. It does a great job of adding a little more chaos to the mix. It's not hard to recover from your flashlight being cut, it doesn't even make noise in of itself. But you feel like you messed up so bad that, from what I've observed, it's when you're most likely to start making mistakes out of panic. While we're on a roll with this game, I want to talk about Tattletail himself. This little thing injects so much personality into the game. He rides the perfect line between being the best egg of all time and being an annoying little stain that I would kick over and feel nothing. It's all fun when he's doing his goofy laugh from across the hall, but once he starts yelling at me because he needs to eat 5 seconds after I just gave him food, it's like, alright buddy, hydraulic press time for you.
Why did you do this?
Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, night 4. Once you're done entertaining your new homing Vagers, the yellow one finds a VHS tape for you with the most goofy and catchy commercial of all time. You can flick to different scenes and you'll see Mama teleporting around killing dudes. What's the deal with that? Good question. Night 5 is the last night, kinda. It's the most involved since you need to run around grabbing party equipment and the other Tattletails. There's this semi-interesting gimmick where every time you grab a new Tattletail, one of their meters is pre-drained, so you gotta get moving to refill it as fast as possible. Would have been funny if one of the Tattletails had its battery drained for an extra middle finger. This is another one where you actually have to do a lot of maneuvering around Mama, because you have a lot of stuff to get done, and assuming you're staying on top of your meters, you'll eventually be forced to make noise whenever you grab a new one of these things. Now's a good time to mention, I remember being able to jump to the top of this roof area by the garage to hide from Mama until she gives up, but aside from the fact that I guess I've never jumped in a video game before, I also kept getting killed and I don't know why, so maybe they patched this and I didn't know. We bring all the party equipment downstairs, and apparently this is a different party than I was expecting, but I'm not some type of narc, so yeah, sure, let's do this. Right before our fun ritual sleepover is finished, Mama intervenes and now we're stuck in this small mini night. You're locked in the basement and all the candles are hidden in vases around the room. I remember this being really hard when I first played the game, but you can make things real easy for yourself if you know what you're doing. This is another section without Tattletail, so that's a chunk of noise you don't need to be making, and Mama instantly gets lured to a location near you whenever you break a vase, which initially seems like a bad thing since she'll always be on you, but that makes it really easy to break a vase on one side of the room, then break one on the other side and keep bouncing between sections without much chance of death. There's also not much incentive to keep moving, so if Mama's really giving you trouble, looking her dead in the eyes and asserting dominance until she pisses off is a viable strategy. Maybe this is actually a horrible idea, because it sounds like it could be, but it would have been interesting to see how this would have played out if you held Tattletail during the whole section, and without a way upstairs, meager depletion means death as a way of raising the stakes and giving it an indirect time limit. I know I'm making this out to be very easy, but I did 2 playthroughs for this video, and I actually had a bit of trouble on the second one, cause for whatever reason, Mama kept on teleporting literally right in front of my path, meaning I had to keep on doing quick U-turns to avoid getting cheated out of a life. I don't know why this kept happening and I didn't die to it, but it definitely made things a lot more tense than they had to be. That being said, I guess I was hoping for a bit more difficulty since this is positioned as the game's final boss, so to speak. Regardless, we got our candles back, the ritual's over, and now it's Christmas Day. Things diverge here cause surprisingly, this game has multiple endings. If you go through it the normal way, you get the bad ending where the ritual apparently failed and the game just ends. The good ending requires a bit more doing. Throughout the game, there's a bunch of eggs to collect, and it's implied that whatever you find in the eggs is stuff that Mama ate and shat out, which includes fun stuff like dead bugs, fingernails, full-on rabbits, and a missing sock, which kind of implies the sock has been gone long enough to be acknowledged as missing, which makes me question how long Mama's been in this house for. Not only do you not get murdered, you also get the golden flashlight that makes the light last much longer and makes it much brighter. It even carries over into the DLC and playthroughs you do after this. It's a nice upgrade for doing the extra stuff, but I find myself deleting my save data to use the default flashlight more often than not. The semi-dim blue glow of the stock flashlight adds a lot to the ambience in a way that's just completely gone using the Golding variant, and the buffs it provides only makes an easy game even easier. Also, side note, Christmas is the only stage during daytime, and we've got to evacuate quick because I think the sun is about to crash into Earth. The game asks you at the start for brightness settings, and I generally set them to max whenever a game asks, just a monitor thing, but oh my god does it not go well for this game. On my second run, I left it at default, and things actually looked nicer and a bit more intimidating at parts because pitch black rooms just got a lot more pitch blacker. The sun's even slightly less blinding, yeah, it still ain't great, and the kitchen light looks like it's made for melting skin off more than it is lighting up the area, even if it does give some surreal late night atmosphere that I can appreciate. But wait, what did I say earlier? Yes, this game got free DLC in the form of a mini expansion called the Kaleidoscope. I feel like nobody really talks about this part. The DLC released around 5 months after the game came out, and even though I said earlier tons of people played Tattletail, it feels like barely anybody played the DLC. In the case somebody actually talks about this game, because it feels like that rarely happens, I hardly ever see the Kaleidoscope get mentioned. There wasn't much fanfare when it came out either. It got one vague trailer that garnered a small fraction of views the launch trailer did, and that was pretty much it. I wouldn't be surprised if the reason why it's been mostly forgotten is because a lot of people never even played it. I mean, I know I didn't find out this was a thing until months after it came out. The DLC feels weirdly story-focused, but it's also hard for me to figure out what exactly the story is, which, yeah, I haven't talked about the story, I've been saving it for now, just give me a second. We start on the final day of the main campaign, but Tattletail seems to have picked up some clinical depression while we were gone. Imagine being depressed with a face like that. Living as one of these things must be hell. We get a knock at the door with a mysterious letter that guides us into the past where everything is kind of the same, kind of different. Murder is off the table, and now we get introduced to the real antagonist of this game, Dewdrop. This rat bastard steals an egg from my man Butternut, meaning he is public enemy number 1 and must die. Your memories are all messed up, so you have 2 options: live with it or go into the Kaleidoscope and figure out what's wrong. We find out this kid has the strongest ankles of all time, and here we are. You can tell it's a kaleidoscope because everything's blue. Those are famous for only having one color. They really don't explain what the Kaleidoscope is, other than memories are stored here, and the longer you stay here, the more your memories get messed up, to which I say, unless there's something we aren't seeing, our memories got messed up without us going in here, so what's up with that? Also, why are our memories wrong to begin with? Is this kid suppressing the trauma of the wackiest week of their life, or is this like years later and they just forgot? While I'm on a roll here, what is Mama's deal? Why is she killing people? I'm more so surprised the game doesn't answer this stuff, considering a lot of these Mascot horror games get a hard-on whenever the word lore is thrown around. But when I step back and think about it, yeah, stuff just kinda happens in this game. There's also 2 Tattletails here that were apparently pulled from sale for not having a way drive, whatever that is. You wander around here until finding a VHS tape which has a different commercial that might have the most stupidly memorable theme song of anything ever. Now Tattletail's back to normal. Looks like that VHS tape came with an antidepressant subscription. But unfortunately, Mama is not a mental health advocate, so we get dragged back to the Kaleidoscope. This is one of the harder bits of the game. You gotta walk your way from the end of the segment back to the start, and Mama's in pursuit again. Weirdly being the only time she's after you in the whole DLC. Did I mention this game's easy? The main problem making things hard is that this part's basically a linear straight shot to the end, so Mama is more than capable of cutting you off completely at multiple points, not helped by Tattletail's meters draining fast and the items for them being placed in weird and sometimes even easy to miss spots. Also, the Kaleidoscope has a unique jump scare for Mama, and it might be one of the stupidest jump scares I've seen in anything. Your memories are back to normal, Tattletail's back to normal, and that closes the game in its entirety, and you know what? It's a pretty silly game, I dig it. It's nothing crazy, and looking back has highlighted that a lot more of the game has nothing going on than I remember, but it's held up by some fun gameplay and a very charming egg. Of course it's a Mascot horror game, so there's obviously gotta be more for the series, so where's Tattletail heading? Well, this is awkward. Tattletail's a rare case in the Mascot horror industry, one and done, which honestly it's a bit surprising it never got at the very least a second game. It didn't even get any sort of merchandise of what you see for similar games, which is a bit shocking honestly. But what if you're special and have been blessed with the knowledge of a sequel for Tattletail? Because if you're one of those gifted few, you might want to be sitting down for this. So here's my dirty little secret. I made some fake Tattletail 2 leaks and they made rounds in the community. You might immediately ask, Hyper, why do such a thing, you repulsive freak? First off, Jesus Christ, calm down. Second off, I don't know, I thought it'd be funny. It started off as a dumb joke and escalated into a fun night in Gmod. I actually don't have any of the original files for the leaks or a recording of me making them, so here's me trying to recreate them to the best of my ability. Here's a silly part of this for me, but I knew basically nothing of setting up objects in Gmod prior to this, making some parts of this was painful. I am definitely not a Gmod guy. One of the main things I remember was this Christmas tree refusing to not clip through the floor, and I didn't find out I could freeze objects until an embarrassing amount of time later. I sort of just grabbed this random winter house map off the workshop, found a Tattletail model, not a Mama one because there weren't any good ones, and started throwing things around. Looking back on these leaks is funny because you can tell I spent no time on these because it was just a bit for me and my friends. Notably, on the first one, I accidentally overlaid the VHS filter over the logo. I also copy and pasted this filter from my Manhunt thumbnail, and the Mama in the shadows in both of these is just this render I traced in black both times. We have fun here. I wasn't really expecting anyone to see these. I posted them on Twitter just to make the joke funnier, but it was wild seeing people debating on the validity of these despite them coming from someone with barely any followers who mainly makes Sonic shitposts. I think this is important though because it made it clear that despite the gap from 2016 to now, there's still a market for more Tattletail content. As it stands right now, the series is basically done, but recently there were postings from one of the original developers and if people are interested in an official plush. And it's not like they ignore the guy, as Esposito also made Neon White, and one of the presents you can get is a Tattletail. That being said, I also have some respect for the people who made the game and just releasing something they had an idea for and leaving it at that. In an era where a game releases unfinished with a first chapter where you have to pay for each subsequent chapter, and already they've announced a full line of merchandise, 5 books, and a movie, Tattletail feels like the only normal one at the family reunion. I still stand by what I said like a minute ago, that I want to see more Tattletail content, but I feel like it's gotten the right to do that through the passage of time and actually being a good game, which seems to be optional nowadays. I should probably close this video out before I start complaining more about the state of this corner of indie horror. God knows that's a whole video on its own. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, take care, and I'll see you all later.